Discover the incredible answer from the Apache woman, a touching transformation between cowboy and culture. Jack Moore trudged along the worn path of his ranch, the heat of the Arizona sun pressing down on him like the weight of his debt. At 45, his hands bore the stories of hard days spent carving a life from the unforgiving land, but now he felt the sting of impending failure as whispers of his ranch's demise seeped through the community like dust in the wind. The once proud legacy of the Moore family, a century-old heritage bound to this land, was slipping through his fingers, and each day felt like a fight against a tide of judgment from neighbors who, in their narrow-mindedness, were oh so quick to decide he no longer belonged. As Jack pushed through the dry brush, a familiar knot of anxiety twisted inside him. He tried to picture the faces of his wife and teenage daughter as he worked. They were his everything, the flickering lights against the backdrop of his encroaching darkness. The weight of his fears pressed down further, but failure wasn't just in losing the ranch. That would be the icing on the cake. No, it would mean failing them too. The community's glances felt heavier than the debt he carried, as if their judgment was a branding iron searing his pride. On this day, however, an unexpected encounter with Alawan, an Apache woman more vibrant than the Arizona sunsets, would change the course of everything. Her piercing eyes caught him off guard as they spoke a silent language of understanding that Jack hadn't anticipated. She shared stories passed down through her lineage, tales of healing intertwined with Horse's powerful spirit deeply connected to Apache culture. Each word dripped with wisdom, igniting a flame within him, a spark of renewed hope. As Jack listened, ideas raced through his mind. The concept of incorporating traditional healing practices with horseback therapy intrigued him. This newfound passion sat at the precipice of a moral dilemma. Could he, a cowboy steeped in rugged traditions, become a bridge to healing in a way that could save his family and his legacy? But what would others think? As the visions danced in his head, the bitter feeling of inadequacy rushed back in like a rogue wave. Doubts clawed at him. His identity, tied to the ranching life, was threatened by the unknown, by the unconventional methods he'd have to embrace. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as the glow of hope began to illuminate his path, bureaucratic shadows loomed. A new rule proposed to remove horses from his therapy practices, razor-sharp barbs that cut deeper than any external hardship he faced. His heart raced with a mixture of anger and despair. The stakes had never been higher. With his dreams slipping on the horizon, he stood at the nexus of a chaotic storm inside his mind. Would he risk everything for a chance at reinventing himself? Or would he succumb to the expectations of a town that had already drawn lines he felt compelled to cross? As he braced himself for a confrontation with the world around him, Jack's resolve solidified. He needed to fight. Fight not just for his passion, but for his family legacy, for his identity itself. But as he looked out toward the townsfolk waiting for him with silent judgment, a question echoed in his mind, reverberating in the depths of his being. Would they accept him if he dared to step outside the bounds of tradition? Jack stood at the edge of his property, the wild expanse of land stretching before him like a canvas waiting to be painted. The weight of the new rule hung over him like dark clouds, threatening the very foundation of what he had built. Each passing moment amplified the storm of emotions, frustration, fear, and a flicker of defiance ignited within him. He felt the burn of determination, a deep commitment to define himself beyond the expectations thrust upon him. The stories Alawan shared echoed in his mind, illuminating a path forward that intersected his family's legacy with the heart of Apache traditions. It was a radical departure from the stereotypes entrenched in his life. Yet this path could lead to healing, not just for him or the horses, but for the disillusioned community around him. Eager to redefine his narrative, Jack turned his attention to his horses. Their gentle, spirited natures seemed to resonate with his growing resolve. He approached them, feeling a surge of connection, as if they understood the depths of his internal conflict. This was more than a battle for survival. It could be a rebirth through the power of working together, fragile and raw. However, the nagging question still churned within him. What if the community sensed his deviation from the expected cowboy archetype with disdain? He recalled their judgmental whispers, the veiled comments from neighbors during brief exchanges, distant but piercing. Jack hesitated, his hands clenching and unclenching as he wrestled with the fear of ridicule. The thought of losing everything after all his years of toil seemed an unbearable weight, yet not trying felt like an even greater folly. Determined to carve out a new image, he gathered a few close friends whose lives had been as intertwined with the land as his own. They met that evening under the expansive Arizona sky, the stars interrupting the black canvas with delicate points of light. Sipping whiskey, they shared stories, laughter, and concern for the future of the ranch. Jack observed their responses carefully, gauging their reactions as he unveiled his vision. A retreat that combined horseback therapy with traditional healing practices inspired by Eloin. Initially, there was a palpable pause. Jack's heart raced as he watched their expressions shift, from surprise to interest. Encouraged, he pressed on, emphasizing the potential to not only invigorate the ranch, but to reignite hope in their community. He painted a picture of transformation, both personally and collectively, driven by an earnest desire to challenge deep-rooted fears with empathy and understanding. Yet, there was a turning point in the discussion. One friend voiced skepticism, questioning the viability of such a departure from the familiar role of a cowboy. Jack's heart sank momentarily, but rather than retreating into defensiveness, he leaned into the tension. "What's the worst that could happen?" he replied steadily. "We fail, and I go back to the ranch as it was. But what if we succeed? What if we connect with something bigger than ourselves?" This opened a floodgate of conversation, allowing others to express both doubt and curiosity. Jack listened intently, absorbing ideas and adjustments as they began crafting a framework together. They were no longer just talking about a new plan. They were collaborating on how to embody change. As they finalized the details, the flicker of hope ignited into a steady flame inside Jack. But as he drove home that night, the lingering uncertainty echoed in his mind. Had he been too hasty? Could he really bridge two worlds without losing himself in the process? The edges of self-doubt crept closer, and while the possibility of a true reckoning gathered strength, he wondered, was he ready to face both the community and himself in the risky new roles he was preparing to take on? With the rise of the sun the next day, the reality of the fight loomed larger than ever. Preparations for a meeting with the townsfolk left him with a single suffocating thought. The time had come to face the people who shaped his world, to stand before them and confront the heart of his newly found vision. Would he find allies in that crowd, or would he be met with the unyielding walls of traditionalism? The answer hung tantalizingly in the air as he set forth, ready to embrace the tension of the moment, yet fully grasping the stakes involved. Standing before the small town hall, Jack felt a whirlwind of emotions stir within him. The air was thick with tension, a palpable awareness that today wasn't merely about presenting an idea. It was about confronting a legacy anchored in fear of the unknown. He had assembled a presentation that measured every facet of his plan, each slide a bridge intended to connect him to the townsfolk, but there was still an insistent quiver in his gut. Doubt was a troublesome companion. As he pushed open the heavy door, the rustic wooden frame creaked ominously, a reminder that entering this space meant stepping into a tradition he was questioning. The townsfolk, sitting scattered in mismatched chairs beneath fluorescent lights, looked up expectantly. Faces he had known his entire life, their features molded by the same rough landscape that had shaped him, now bore expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. With every step to the front of the room, he contemplated the power dynamics at play. It wasn't just about his vision, but about redefining roles that were nearly written in stone. "Thanks for being here," he started, voice steady but revealing an underlying tremor. "I've been thinking a lot about how the ranch can do more than just sustainability. What if it could also heal?" He gestured towards the projector as the first slide lit up the room, showcasing vibrant images of the retreat he envisioned, colorful pastures, unbroken horses, and people's faces filled with hope. Drawing strength from the horses alongside his rediscovered Apache teachings, he introduced horseback therapy as a holistic way forward. As he spoke, passion ignited within him. Each word became a step away from the man he once was, a man bound by expectations, and a leap toward who he could become, an innovator, a facilitator of healing. Yet, as he laid out his dreams, a familiar voice emerged from the back. "This isn't the way a cowboy should be," Carl, his childhood friend, scoffed. "We've worked tirelessly to earn our image. You want to throw it all away for some new age nonsense?" Jack inhaled sharply, the sting of betrayal tightening his chest. Disappointment was an unwelcome guest, but instead of shrinking beneath it, he confronted Carl with a newfound resolve. "What if holding on to that image is what's keeping us stuck?" he replied, keeping his voice calm. "This doesn't erase our past. It builds on it. We can embrace who we are and offer something transformative. Can't that coexist?" Silence followed his question, an echoing stillness that felt heavy yet liberating. Jack realized that confronting Carl's challenge wasn't merely about defending his idea. It was about challenging the belief systems that had frozen them in time. It wasn't just a moment for him, it was also a moment for all the townsfolk, giving them permission to ponder the possibilities beyond their boundaries. He saw a shift. A few nods mingled with furrowed brows. Curiosity rippled through the room, igniting a discussion that built like a gentle breeze growing into a storm. Jack remained attuned, listening to voices previously quiet, offering insights and concerns. He absorbed their fears not as repudiations, but as essential components of dialogue, recognizing the value in their contributions. Hours later, as he wrapped up the meeting, he felt lighter, even amidst uncertainty. The conversation was far from finished, but he had nudged the town into a space where questioning their reality was a viable path forward. He stepped outside to catch his breath, the moon hanging heavy in the constant Arizona sky. Ideas fought for attention in his mind. This was just the beginning, and now the ground was more fertile than ever. But as he headed home, a realization washed over him like a sudden winter chill. Had he adequately prepared for the backlash? The weight of the crowd's unspoken doubts clawed at him, amplifying his sense of trepidation. What if he stirred an unresolved anxiety that went beyond mere skepticism, challenging the very essence of their identities? As Jack parked his truck in the familiar land of his ranch, he could feel the pulse of change replacing the quiet that once dominated his thoughts. And in that tension, he wondered uneasily, had he laid the groundwork for his transformation, and who else might rise to oppose him as he dared to alter the course of tradition? As Jack sat in his truck, engine humming softly, he replayed the meeting in his mind. Each face had told a story, their expressions flipping between intrigue and apprehension. Tonight had unveiled a raw vulnerability he was unaccustomed to confronting, not only from others but within himself. Would he really change the course of the ranch and perhaps even the town? The questions clawed at him with relentless vigor, disrupting any sense of peace he longed to find. With a resolute flick of his wrist, he cut the engine and stepped into the cool night air. The sky was a canvas of stars, twinkling like unresolved possibilities, radiating uncertainty and potential all at once. He leaned against the worn wood of his porch, the familiar creaks offering some consolation amidst the chaos of thought. His father had always praised the value of tradition, building it up as a fortress that held the family's identity and values together. But was that fortress now a prison? Jack's heart raced as he found himself caught in a tempest of internal conflict. The adrenaline from the presentation had begun to fade, leaving behind a gnawing sense of isolation. Would they see him as a traitor to their way of life, or could he convince them that evolution didn't negate their history? Striding to the paddock, he watched the horses grazing peacefully, their quiet existence a stark contrast to the tumult he felt within. Memories flooded back, moments shared with his father, riding the range, the wisdom passed down with each sunrise. He had idolized the notion of what it meant to be a cowboy, tethered to unyielding values of strength and stoicism. Yet as he leaned against the galvanized fence, he questioned whether those definitions truly served him, or anyone else, now. Jack decided that tomorrow would not be another day lost to fear. Instead, he would harness the confidence that had sparked within him tonight. That was the kind of change he wanted to be a part of, being bold enough to redefine a legacy while respecting its roots. Each time he envisioned the ranch thriving under the weight of mental wellness and healing, he could feel an adrenaline high pushing through his veins, urging him to act. The next morning, after hours of restless sleep that teetered on the edge of night, he gathered his notes, still trembling with fresh purpose. He needed more than just his voice if he hoped to influence the opinions in town. He recalled the Apache teachings he had embraced again, teachings that spoke of connection and balance. He resolved to reach out to a local indigenous woman, Miriam, who had once guided him through ceremonies that awakened dormant parts of himself. She was well-versed in traditional healing and could lend credibility to his vision. Finding courage in the thought of collaboration, Jack drove into town. He needed to connect, face-to-face, idea. This meeting wasn't just about reaffirming his ideas. He wanted to learn from her, to integrate her insights into his evolving understanding of community healing. As he stepped into the small cafe where Miriam often spent her time, a wave of nervous energy coursed through him. What if she dismissed his idea outright? But then again, what if she saw the value in it? Jack was ready for either possibility, ready to confront yet another challenge in this journey of transformation. "Jack," she greeted, her warm smile matching the softness of her voice. "What brings you here today?" Taking a deep breath, he met her gaze. "I want to engage in a conversation that might redefine what this ranch can offer. I believe we can blend our strengths, your wisdom, and my vision." A silence enveloped them, heavy yet brimming with potential. As Miriam studied him, he felt the weight of her eyes, an anchor holding him steady against self-doubt. "Let's talk," she finally said, the hint of a smile breaking through. In that instant, Jack realized he was standing at the precipice of a turning point, ready to embrace an unfamiliar alliance. This wasn't just about changing minds in town, it was about fundamentally shifting himself. The boundaries he had known were beginning to ripple, aflame with intoxicating possibility. But as he engaged in this conversation with Miriam, a chilling thought loomed in the back of his mind. That his own journey might unravel deeper, unforeseen truths he was not yet ready to confront. What facets of himself would be exposed as he ventured further into the unknown? Jack took a seat across from Miriam, the warmth of her smile grounding him amidst his swirling thoughts. He cleared his throat, feeling the weight of both expectation and vulnerability. "I've been thinking. The ranch isn't just land or livestock to me, it's a canvas for what healing can look like, for myself and for those around us." Miriam leaned in slightly, her fingers thoughtfully tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "Healing is often a journey inward before it can manifest outward. How do you envision that journey taking shape within your community?" The question lingered in the air, reverberating with the pulse of implications better left unexplored. Jack hesitated. Could he articulate the raw chaos within him? This was a moment demanding clarity, yet every word felt entangled in doubt. "I want to create workshops," he began, the idea flowing slowly like a stream bursting from the ice. "Spaces where people can come together, share their stories, learn about mental wellness. We've entrenched ourselves in silence for too long, believing it's the cowboy way, but I think we need to break that silence." Miriam's gaze was piercing, prompting him to peel away layers he had polished to a shine in the mirror of self-reliance. "And what if they resist?" she asked. "What happens when tradition challenges your intentions?" The realization hit like a fist to his gut. The weight of the fears that had strangled him last night surged anew. Would they dismiss his intentions? Label him a charlatan? Jack envisioned the townsfolk's skepticism, their familiar faces shadowed with disapproval. But buried beneath that fear, he felt a flicker of resilience. "I have to try," he answered, the steadiness in his voice surprising even him. "Change isn't easy, I get that, but I've lived with the effects of silence, Miriam. I've felt its suffocation." Miriam nodded, a deep understanding passed silently between them. "You must share your own story, Jack. Vulnerability breeds connection." He felt the urge to retreat as the familiar ghosts of shame fluttered in his chest. At the ranch, he had always been the strong one, the stoic figure standing tall against nature's whims. Revealing his vulnerabilities felt akin to bearing a wound, raw, exposed. "I don't know where to start," he chuckled weakly, rubbing the back of his neck in a familiar gesture of unease. Begin by claiming your narrative, she encouraged gently. What has brought you to this point? A realization of sorts? What do you wish others to understand about their own pain? Focus on your truth. It may illuminate theirs. Sitting in that small cafe, illuminated by the soft glows of light, Jack felt the world around him grow distant. He was teetering on the edge of something profound, perhaps even transformative. The potential for honesty seemed both terrifying and liberating. "All right," he declared, emboldened by Miriam's insight. "I think I can do that. I can share why I believe we need this change." Her smile widened as if he had crossed an invisible threshold. "There's power in the stories we hold. They may carry the weight of our wounds, but they can also bear the light of healing." Jack spent the next hour in conversation with Miriam, delving into the depths of his fears and hopes. Each revelation felt like shedding an old skin. His resolve solidified as he began understanding the importance of his voice. By the time they parted, his spirit was invigorated, though apprehension coiled in his belly. Would his vulnerability translate into strength, or would it leave him fractured? As he drove away from the cafe, Jack contemplated the next steps. He knew he had to rally his friends, fellow ranchers who might share his vision or push back fiercely. Would sharing his story convince them to embrace this new path? Or would they cling to the same traditions that shaped their upbringing? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the landscape. Jack found himself at a crossroads, where the lingering echoes of doubt warred with flashes of ambition. His journey was only just beginning, and he would soon face the townspeople not just as a rancher, but as a leader, a catalyst for change. But could he truly withstand the tempest of resistance that lay ahead? Uncertainty gnawed at him. As he steered towards home, the comfort of familiar roads felt tinged with the anxiety of the unknown. What would he discover about himself as he prepared to stand before those who might reject him? The revelations ahead seemed inevitable yet daunting, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the true test of his character loomed near, just out of view. The morning light filtered through the ranch's kitchen window, illuminating the clutter of papers strewn across the table. Jack sat in silence, staring at his own scribbled notes, a patchwork of thoughts on mental wellness and vulnerability. Each line captured his hopes for change, but they felt weighty with responsibility, the gravity of leadership pressing down on him like the summer sun. His mind raced through the possibilities and pitfalls, cycling through every scenario like a relentless freight train. He had a plan, yet doubt loomed larger. Would sharing his experience be enough? Was it possible to truly help others? Or would his attempts at vulnerability only expose the cracks he had worked so hard to hide? Jack poured himself another cup of coffee, the heat warming his fingers, and took a fortifying breath. Those questions echoed, demanding answers he wasn't sure he could provide. Driven by a newfound sense of purpose, he gathered his phone and called Kevin, the closest of his friends who also worked at the ranch. Jack had often turned to Kevin for support, always the reliable confidant, but sharing his deeper ambitions felt distinctly different. Was he really ready to clothe himself in honesty and invite others to witness his flaws? When Kevin answered, there was a hint of surprise in his voice. "Hey man, everything okay?" "Yeah," Jack replied slowly, feeling a pang of uncertainty. "I need to talk to you about something important." After a brief but electric conversation, they arranged to meet in the barn, an informal setting that felt safe and familiar. Jack arrived early, leaning against the wooden beams while listening to the soft rustle of the wind sweeping across the open fields. It was almost serene, but apprehension clawed at his insides. Kevin arrived, shaking the dust off his boots and squinting against the sunlight that streamed through the barn door. "What's on your mind?" he asked, sensing the tension in Jack's stance. "I've been considering some changes for the ranch, new workshops, a focus on mental wellness." Jack's voice faltered as he started. The gravity of his proposal hit, and he watched as Kevin raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard. "Workshops? Like for therapy or something?" Kevin's incredulous question hit a nerve. "You know how folks out here feel about that stuff, right?" The air thickened, and Jack felt his resolve crumbling. The words hung there between them like a chasm waiting to swallow him whole. "Yeah, I do. That's why I'm talking to you. I think it's time we consider that silence isn't strength." Kevin crossed his arms, pondering. "And what makes you so sure it'll work?" People don't take kindly to change. Frustration bubbled within Jack, but he quelled it, remembering Miriam's words about vulnerability. Because I've lived with silence, it suffocated me, and I want better for us. I want to help people face their demons instead of burying them. Kevin's posture softened slightly, its subtle shift allowing a glimpse of possibility. Okay, so what's the plan? You're talking about starting a conversation that could blow up in our faces. Jack felt a rush of adrenaline as he plunged deeper into his vision. He laid out the framework for the workshops, detailing how integration of storytelling and group discussions could facilitate healing. With each word, he became bolder, tapping into the urgency he had felt under Miriam's scrutiny. Kevin nodded slowly, his skepticism lessening as Jack articulated the potential value of the idea. People might come around, Kevin finally admitted. But if they don't, you need to be ready to handle that backlash. Not everyone will appreciate what you're trying to do. The weight of those words burrowed into Jack's mind, twisting him with anxiety. Could he bear the weight of dissent? Could he remain steadfast when criticism pierced through his defenses? I know, he replied, swallowing hard. But I can't let fear control this. There's too much at stake. For me, for all of us. Their conversation wound through various scenarios and defenses, Jack honing his resolve. Though he felt significantly lighter after opening up, a subtle tension remained. It would take courage not only to initiate this change, but also to withstand the fallout. When they finally broke for lunch, Jack's mind buzzed with anticipation and fear alike. He could feel the edges of his plan sharpening even as a sense of dread nestled at the back of his thoughts. As he drove away from the barn, he glanced once more at the vast expanse of the ranch, a home, a battleground, a sanctuary. With each mile he traversed, he grappled with his commitment. The desire for change burned fiercely within him, yet the fear of judgment loomed like a storm cloud ahead. What would happen when he stood alone in front of familiar faces, ready to confront them with his heart laid bare? That test, that moment of truth, was drawing dangerously near. The air felt heavier as Jack returned home, the familiar landscape starting to morph into an emblem of what lay ahead. He parked next to the weathered barn, still buzzing with the adrenaline of his conversation with Kevin. Doubt, however, persisted, hissing softly at the edges of his determination. He wondered if his ambition to advocate for mental wellness was just a dream, or a necessary push toward a new reality. Inside, he dropped his bag on the table, surveying the walls adorned with photos of days gone by. Each moment frozen in time represented a part of himself he felt he was leaving behind. The laughter captured in those images echoed in his mind, mixing happiness with a pang of nostalgia. Somewhere, amidst the joyful faces, he sensed a profound loneliness, a reminder of unvoiced struggles that many bore in silence. He poured another cup of coffee, pacing the length of the kitchen, contemplating how to effectively communicate his vision. Should he appear strong and unyielding, or allow his true vulnerabilities to shine through? His immediate instinct was to present a facade of confidence, but Jack recalled Miriam's advice. Vulnerability could foster connection but also opened wounds. With a sigh, he turned his thoughts inward, analyzing his motives. Was this drive born from genuine passion, a need for authenticity, or was it fueled by the fear of being unseen? His introspection was soon interrupted by a loud bang from outside, the ranch's gate slamming against its post from an unexpected gust of wind. It shook him from his reverie, and he headed outside to check. As he stepped onto the porch, the sun cast golden rays across the grassy fields, and he spotted a few of the ranch hands gathered near the corral, their laughter blended with the sounds of hooves clattering on the hard-packed dust. A strange yearning welled up in Jack as he observed them. He longed not just for their camaraderie, but for their acceptance of his ideas. "Hey, Jack," one of the younger ranchers called out, gesturing. "You coming to the barbecue later?" "Yeah, I'll be there," he replied, a smile attempting to breach his fixed exterior. But beneath the casual reply lay a deeper confrontation. How could he bring up his ideas in a place so resistant to change? Over the next few hours, the internal battle intensified. Jack turned the barbecue in his mind, conjuring various scenarios. With each potential approach, he felt his resolve strengthening and wavering in equal measure. Would they listen, or dismiss him as a misfit for suggesting that the strongest men are those who openly share their weaknesses? As dusk approached, and the smell of grilled meat wafted in the air, Jack made his way to the gathering. The familiar faces greeted him, laughter cascading like a refreshing stream amidst the warmth of friendship. He felt a pang of love and longing, yet he also sensed an invisible barrier between him and them, the barrier of unspoken truths and unacknowledged pain. After spending some time mingling, Jack took a breath, gathering himself for the pivotal moment. He stood up on the porch, gaining the attention of the group. Butterflies danced in his stomach, urging him to speak, but he hesitated. His heart raced, echoing a profound truth. Unearthing his vulnerability would not come without a price. "Listen, everyone," he started, voice shaking. "I know we've been doing things a certain way, but—" The words caught in his throat, churning with deep emotions. He needed to push through, to find the right phrasing to break the ice. But as his mind raced to formulate his next words, murmurs interrupted him. Laughter turned into a quiet hum, unexpected reactions flickering in the eyes of friends who had never considered such a conversation. Were they genuinely curious or already recoiling at the notion? The pause stretched as Jack stood vulnerable before them, a mix of resolve and fear swirling inside him. Beyond his intentions to create a dialogue, he realized he might also unwittingly be bringing down hardships he had long avoided. What lay ahead was tumultuous, yet somehow necessary. Would they embrace his call for change? Or would they respond with resistance, igniting a battle he had not anticipated? The air thickened, and Jack felt poised at the precipice of transformation, both for himself and for the people he cared about. He took a deep breath, locking eyes with Kevin in the crowd. The moment pulsed with electricity, demanding answers, igniting hope, and carving a path toward potential revelation. It was time to leap. Jack's voice trembled as he struggled to gather the words swirling in his mind. The collective gaze of friends and co-workers weighed heavily, a pressure that threatened to crush him. Yet amid the uncertainty, a flicker of determination ignited within him. There was no turning back. The moment demanded honesty. "I believe we need to talk about our mental health," Jack declared, feeling the heat of vulnerability wash over him. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, casting glances at one another as if waiting for someone to laugh or dismiss him. But the spirit of determination coursed through his veins, shifting the tone of the gathering. "Like the time you fell off that bull and refused to admit you were hurt?" Kevin interjected, attempting a laugh to diffuse the tension. The group chuckled, but the tension remained. Jack sensed the walls of defensiveness rising, yet he pressed on, refusing to let their discomfort derail him. "No, seriously," he said, his voice gaining strength. "This isn't a joke. I've been thinking a lot about how tough it can be out here. We face so many challenges, and sometimes we keep our struggles bottled up. It affects us, all of us. It's okay to admit when things get heavy." He glanced around the porch, watching as the laughter faded into a heavy silence. Eyes widened in confusion and disbelief, some skeptical, others curious, and more than a few embarrassed. He stuck to his narrative, feeling the primal urge to escape rise within him, but pushed it back with a wave of courage. "Just a few months ago I felt completely lost. It was easy to feel alone, but it was when I learned to talk about it that I finally saw that I wasn't. We've got to create a space where we can be honest with one another." To his surprise, the murmur of the crowd shifted. Some began to nod, others leaned forward, intrigued. Jack's heart lifted, stirring hope within him. Conversations about feelings had been taboo, but maybe they were ready to venture into that territory together. "So what do we do then?" one of the ranch hands asked, testing the waters. Jack seized the opening. "Let's start by sharing. I mean truly sharing. I'm willing to go first if it means we can open the door for others to follow." His voice steadied as he shared his own vulnerabilities, the struggles with anxiety he had so often hidden, the moments of self-doubt that gnawed at his confidence. Each word felt like shedding a layer he had worn for years. After he finished, a weight descended over the porch. Jack could sense the shift in energy, an awakening of unspoken truths. And then, one by one, the ranch hands began to share their experiences. At first it was hesitant, a few small confessions and nervous laughter, but as more voices emerged, a ripple of solidarity formed. "I never thought I could talk about this stuff," someone said, eyes glistening in the fading light. "But I know exactly what you mean." Over the next hour, stories flowed into the night, intertwining laughter with confessions. As the stars emerged above them, the warmth radiating from the gathering transcended the simple act of sharing. It became a launchpad for deeper connections. Yet beneath the comforting exchanges lay an undercurrent of fear. Jack felt it, the unshakable worry that some wouldn't embrace this new approach. The tight-knit culture surrounding the ranch, with its unwritten rules of stoicism, could easily draw its barriers back in place. As the barbecue dwindled and the conversations began to wind down, Jack's stomach knotted. While he was ushering in uncharted waters, the inevitable pushback lingered in the shadows. His heart raced with both excitement and dread. He craved to keep this momentum alive, but knew it would not come without resistance. Walking back home, the stars twinkled like a map of untrodden territory. Tomorrow's conversation held the potential to deepen the fissures that had opened tonight. Would those small puddles of vulnerability dry up upon daylight, or would they flourish into something transformative? Lost in thought, Jack realized he wasn't just confronting the culture of silence in others. He was also confronting his own long-held fears of rejection and isolation. The barbs of doubt still nagged at him, the fear of failure crackling like electricity in the air. Yet through that self-doubt ran a thread of burgeoning hope. What lay ahead was uncertain, the possibilities both exhilarating and frightening. Jack knew one thing: he had taken the first step into the unknown. What awaited him on this precarious journey? Would the bonds that seemed strengthened hold fast against the tides of tradition? Or would his aspirations dissolve into the very silence he hoped to shatter? The next day would surely bring its own challenges, and he felt the tremors of anticipation as he drifted into sleep. The morning light spilled across Jack's kitchen, illuminating the table scattered with papers, notes from the previous night, scribbled ideas for how to maintain the momentum he had built. Sipping his coffee, he hoped to sidestep the heaviness that unfortunately lived alongside his burgeoning resolve. He wrestled with the cacophony of excitement and trepidation twisting within him. Just then, his phone buzzed, breaking his reverie. A message from Kevin, one of the ranch hands who had opened up the night before, sent a ripple of uncertainty through him. "Can we talk today? Got some thoughts?" Jack's heart raced. It was a test. With it came an invitation to deepen the conversation, or perhaps to confront the backlash he'd feared. A swift current of anxiety rumbled in his chest, but Jack reminded himself of the vulnerability they had shared. His determination wrestled hard against the instinct to retreat. He typed back, "Absolutely. Let's meet after lunch?" Hours stretched into an unrelenting haze. Jack worked the livestock and pushed through the motions of his day with a tight focus, but his mind flitted from tasks to the implications of what lay ahead. How would Kevin respond? Would other ranch hands join in support, or would they sink back into their default mode of silence? At midday, Jack made his way to their designated meeting spot, the old bench by the barn, a quiet zone that had witnessed laughter, fights, and the unfolding life of the ranch. Kevin arrived, nervous energy radiating from him. Jack could see it in the jitter of his hands, the way he paced before finally settling on the planks beside Jack. "Last night? It opened things up, man," Kevin started, but uncertainty creased his brow. "But what if some of us don't want to share?" Jack felt the question thrum in the air between them, raw and haunting. "Maybe that's okay. It's about starting a conversation. Not everyone's ready, and that's all right." Kevin paused, running a hand over his hair. "I think I've wanted to talk about stuff for ages, but it's hard to get past the conditioning, you know?" A click of shared understanding sparked in Jack. "Yeah, it is. But remember that it's not all or nothing. Everyone moves at their own pace. The key is to make sure we all have a safe space." "Safe space," Kevin repeated, a ghost of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth, as if he were discovering the meaning behind those two words. The hesitancy lingered heavily, evidence of the cultural chains binding them, but beneath it, they both sensed a flicker of change. In their conversation, they wandered through personal stories. Kevin spoke of his endless cycle of putting on a brave face, of the pressure to be the strong man, a role that had left him feeling hollow more often than not. Jack shared how voices within him had drowned out his own cries for help, a burden strange to articulate, especially against the backdrop of the ranch's unspoken rules. What do we do if someone rejects it? If they brush it aside? Kevin's voice wavered, slumping back against the weathered wood as worry lay heavily in his gaze. We keep going, Jack replied, surprised by the certainty in his tone. This means something. We have to stand firm in it, just like we weathered all those storms before. Change comes slow like everything else out here, but it does come. The winds picked up, tossing stray leaves across the barn's grounds, echoing the swirl of thoughts in Jack's mind. What was at stake was more than just a conversation. It was redefining their bonds and challenging ingrained beliefs. With that realization, urgency coiled around him. He needed to gather more ranch hands, build a support structure that would stand, even when difficult conversations felt like confronting a stampede. I want to write it down, Jack uttered, a vision forming. Let's gather stories, not to force anyone, but to create something that welcomes openness. Kevin's eyes lit up. You mean a journal? Like a collection? That could help bridge the gap for anyone who can't speak up, he suggested, excitement seeping into his voice. Jack nodded, feeling a rush of conviction. Yes, it'll be a way to ease into the conversations that matter. They stood up from the bench, strength growing between them, a fragile thread of hope interwoven with determination. They knew the journey ahead would likely be fraught with struggle, a confrontation of silence, cultural backlash, and the buried debris of traditional masculinity, but they dared to push forward, together. As they walked back, Jack caught a glimpse of the expectations lying heavy on the horizon. The thought flickered through him. How many would make this leap with them, or would they slip back into familiar quietude? Where would this venture into uncharted territory lead? Jack felt the tension tighten as a deeper challenge loomed ahead, one that might either fracture their newfound openness or solidify a bond like nothing they had known before. What awaited them in the coming days? Would conversations blossom or unravel? Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was just beginning. Days turned into weeks as Jack and Kevin implemented their plan to create an open dialogue among the ranch community. The journal they initiated became a sanctuary for stories long kept in the shadows. With each passing day, those who participated shared their authentic experiences, intertwining laughter, pain, and healing. They met regularly, gathering around the flickering warmth of a bonfire, empowering each other to voice feelings that had simmered beneath the surface for too long. Jack's vision to reshape the ranch transformed into something bigger than he had ever imagined. Instead of merely offering healing through the lens of therapy, they were cultivating emotional resilience through genuine connection. The initial hum of skepticism gradually transitioned into a chorus of camaraderie. Familiar faces once marred by judgment began to open, revealing a profound vulnerability that resonated deeply with all. One night, as they huddled around the fire, a brave soul named Tom shared his struggle with anxiety. A battle he had fought alone for years while concealing his pain within the stoic boundaries of cowboy culture. The guitars strummed softly, and as Tom's story unfolded, Jack saw the ripple effect it had, stirring others to speak up. One by one, ranch hands opened up, sharing their own experiences, building bridges of understanding. I thought I had to be tough, not let anyone see me falter, Tom admitted. But here I am, finally letting someone in. His words hung in the air, like a gentle challenge that called them to embrace their humanity. Jack felt a swell of pride mixed with humility, witnessing the shifts taking place, the stories that were blossoming into healing narratives. Jack himself had grown tremendously throughout the journey. The anxious knots that once coiled tightly in his stomach had begun to loosen. He felt a newfound confidence rooted in authenticity. He reveled in personal revelations about vulnerability, the importance of seeking help, and how it was okay to not have all the answers. It was not weakness, it was strength. Simultaneously, he faced adversity from some townsfolk who remained anchored in tradition, doubtful about their newfound approach. This was where Kevin stepped in, alongside Jack, becoming a voice of advocacy and camaraderie. Together they addressed public meetings, articulating the significant small wins they had experienced. They illustrated how a culture of openness not only fostered individual courage, but also strengthened the community's resilience, enhancing their presence as ranchers and as men. With increasing support flowing from ranchers at town meetings, Jack eventually proposed an event, a community gathering to celebrate their commitment to embracing mental wellness and breaking the chains of silence. This would be an open invitation to everyone to join the conversation, reinforcing the idea that healing communities thrive through shared dialogue. As the day of the event approached, excitement buzzed through Jack, intertwined with a nostalgic sense of trepidation. He prepared by reflecting on his journey, capturing moments of transformation on paper. The stakes felt higher than ever, however. The fears that danced within him had significantly less power than before. When the day arrived, an extraordinary atmosphere filled the air, friends and families gathering, eager to witness this shift. Jack stood at the center of the field, his jaw set with determination, his heart swelled with gratitude as he looked out upon a sea of familiar faces filled with curiosity and hope. "Thank you for being here," he started, gratitude lacing his voice. "Today isn't just about me or our ranch, this is about us. It's about what we've learned and how we continue to embrace being human. We are not islands, we are a community, stronger when we are honest, supportive, and open to growth." As he spoke, he witnessed the deep connection that had grown among them. The tension dissipated, replaced with understanding. People began to approach one another, sharing their stories, young and old alike, all contributing to a tapestry of catharsis and connection. Old stigmas began to fade. The fear fizzled away into genuine conversation. Through this experience, Jack proved he could conquer not only his fears, but also the limitations his community had imposed upon itself. What he had initiated became a movement of healing that flowed well beyond the ranch, offering inspiration to others grappling with silence or hesitation. He earned the newfound respect of his peers, not just as a rancher who kept the family legacy alive, but as a leader fostering true change. Finally, as the evening drew to a close and the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack felt a sense of fulfillment envelop him. The visions forged between him and Aloan years ago crystallized as he stood surrounded by the people he cared about, embodying everything he had fought for. He embraced the power of storytelling and connection. He had stepped onto a path of awakening for himself and for the community. In that moment, he felt a profound shift within himself. No longer bound by the weight of expectations, he had achieved what he set out to prove. Vulnerability was not a liability, it was a strength that united them. Jack Moore had transformed, discovering a renewed identity, one that honored tradition while forging ahead toward healing. This was not merely the end of a journey, it was the beginning of something remarkable, where stories continued to weave together in the fabric of their community, forever reshaping the landscape of their lives. So if you followed this journey, you need to subscribe now to keep up with exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this journey. Leave a comment to share your reactions and theories about this transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this message of hope and healing.